Hi, Dr. Kalinko. How are you?
Hi, I am fine. How are you?
I am good. This is Melinda Roy and I'm my co-host Shruti. So we'll be the hosting the event for the rest of the day. So hope you are enjoying our presentations for the day too. So before you start your presentation, my co-host Shruti will give you a brief introduction to the audience about you. Thank you. Thank you,
Sounds great.
Melinda. Hi, Carlin. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. So I'm going to give a small introduction about yourself, about you. So,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, that's Carolyn Cole. Her topic is embarking on the inner journey of rediscovering you. So, Carolyn Cole, with advanced degrees in family counseling and rehabilitation services, practices as psychotherapist in Chicago, focusing on self discovery and relationship healing. She is a licensed clinical professional counselor, licensed marriage and family therapist, and a national certified counselor. Carolyn is also published blogger and a quoted expert in mental health and relationship topics. She provides training and presentations to the diverse audience, including mental health professionals, through various formats. In her free time, she enjoys playing tennis and the piano, and she is dedicated to personal growth and development. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's Carolyn Cole. Please welcome her onto the stage and please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and begin. And thank you so much for having me here. I'm really excited to be talking about this topic, embarking on the inner journey of rediscovering you. And so, a lot of times we begin this journey when it feels like we've lost a part of ourselves. And this is something you might notice within yourself, or you might notice in people that you're working with, or people in your life. And so, all sorts of things can come up when this happens. Sometimes it can be just this awareness almost where it feels like, gosh, what am I doing? Where am I right now? Sometimes it can feel like there is a significant event in your life where it can almost feel like life is crumbling around you. And it manifests differently for different people. But when we look at this process, what happens when we feel like we lose ourselves, there's beauty in that because then that helps us move towards this path of rediscovering ourselves, getting to know ourselves better. Looks at how sometimes when we experience a breakdown, it can lead to a breakthrough. And during this process of the unknown, that can be where the magic sets in. And so that can help in just bringing in a different perspective with this process. Now, when we look at what might happen related to mental and emotional health during this time, sometimes feelings of depression can set in. It can feel just like this emptiness, this numbness, this disconnection is really what it is at a deeper level. It can also bring up feelings of anxiety and of confusion. There can be almost like this inner process of letting go of the old and allowing yourself to do that as you're trying to step into the new. And sometimes in this middle stage, it can be very anxious for a lot of people. That's a normal thing to experience, or just this confusing time as you're going through a shift. It can feel like you're going through an existential crisis of sorts, where you're just trying to maybe make meaning out of what in the world is happening. Now, some different questions and thoughts that might arise for somebody who is on this path. There can be this question of who am I? That really deep existential question. Trying to figure out, who am I? Who have I been up until this point? Who am I really? Okay. And that really helps in this process of getting to know oneself better, where you're trying to then get this understanding about different patterns, different choices, different values, different experiences. What has that helped to do to make you who you are today? And are those things that really align with you? You might ask yourself, how did this happen? This thought when it feels like you've lost yourself. Because a lot of times it tends to be a more gradual process till something happens and it becomes really apparent. And so this can be a common question. How did this happen? Or even how did I let this happen? Or how did I allow this to happen? And then once recognizing it, it's asking ourselves, how do I reconnect with myself again? Where do I go from here? What is the next step on this path? What is this process? During this time, a lot of people start to become what I like to call a seeker. They might be a seeker of knowledge, a seeker of meaning. Some might become a spiritual seeker. Some it's a seeker of themselves, but there's almost this inspiration and this longing to seek for something more. For some, it can be a soul searching journey or this journey to just find oneself again. And it can certainly feel like this existential experience. Now, the process of getting to know ourselves again, it truly is a self discovery journey. And this really does need to be an inner journey. And something that can be really helpful as you approach this process is to become curious. Okay. When you're curious, you really are embodying that emotion of curiosity. Okay. You're not in the space of judging yourself. You're not so much in the space of fear. So it can help calm just some of those inner feelings. It's almost like, hmm, like I'm curious to understand myself better or to learn more about myself better or to really discover who is my authentic self. Okay, this can be a very powerful process. And the more one can embody curiosity, the better the process is going to be. But I find that once somebody starts on this journey, they don't want to go back to the old way of being. It becomes just something that feels more fulfilling and exciting and good, being in the state of curiosity to discover oneself. I know I've spoken to some people who have initially shared, well, I think I know myself pretty well. And I found through this process, there is more to uncover and more to learn about oneself throughout the course of life. And so, what really is being open to this learning process. Now, some things to look at are, what are your passions and interests? Okay. And so we can ask ourselves, what are those things that you feel light you up? What are those things that help you feel inspired, that you get excited about, that you feel when you're involved with these things? That's like you lose track of time. Okay. And a lot of times when we're in this space of needing to rediscover ourselves, these are things that have been pushed on the back burner, not necessarily intentionally, but we've pushed them to the side. And through this process, we want to be re engaging with them again. You can also ask yourself, what did you love to do as a child? A lot of times, I think for a lot of children, there is this creativity and there is this braveness and fearlessness that comes about before we start to, I would say, get involved in it, just societal expectations as we go through the developmental processes. And so you can be thinking about, what are some things you love to do as a child? What are some of those, like, what about those things that you love to do? And see if you can bring some of those pieces back and just notice how that feels. And when we're looking at these different passions and interests, it's not things that you feel you should be doing or probably would be fun to do. It's those things that you feel that inner shift within you when you engage in them. And so it's really about taking time to bring these back. We are also on this self awareness path as well. And so when we are diving deeper, there's some things that we will need to be looking at. And so some things are just understanding different patterns. And this isn't from a place of judgment at all. It's just understanding why you might do what you do. Why did you do what you have done in the past? What sort of changes would you like to make? And it's really, I always like to call it diving deeper down and really getting clear for yourself where these root from. During this time, it is important to be confronting different emotional wounds. And a lot of times, this becomes a process that's a little more enjoyable than before embarking on this journey because you'd be approaching it from the state of curiosity and presence and really wanting to almost feel like you're giving a hug to some of these wounds. And it's really this inner self healing process that you're going through. And in turn, that's really going to help with the emotion regulation piece, where you're going to notice that you're starting to respond to things rather than react to things because you have this better understanding of what's coming up within you. And so, this is an excellent part of that self discovery journey to understand yourself a bit better. Now, as we go through this, we really want to be having courage and patience. And so we can think of how we embrace courage through this process. There are times fear comes up, but I always like to say that we want to get a step ahead of fear rather than feeling like fear is leading us. And as we look at the visual on this slide, it can be like, gosh, what path can I go down? There might be lots of different paths to explore here. And so that brings us back to the curiosity piece. Like, I wonder where this path is going to lead me. I wonder what I'm going to be discovering on this journey. And it really is a journey. And so instead of focusing so much on the final destination, it's what are you learning about yourself along the way? As we're on this path, we also want to bring in self forgiveness. And we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Um, but it really is this process of just embodying that self kindness, self love, self forgiveness for what's happened in the past and who you're becoming. And this, it's almost like you're partnering with yourself in the self discovery process. Now, when we look at this, there's different tools that we do want to be accessing here. Okay. And so I wanted to take some time to go through some of these with you. And so, one big one is journaling. I always like to look at journaling as having a conversation with yourself. It's just on paper. And you could do something called journaling or automatic writing. And with automatic writing, I look at that as more a stream of consciousness experience where you're just thinking or having an intention of what you wanted to be writing about and just write. Okay. It might be this question about who am I? Who am I becoming? Who have I been up until this point? It might be writing about different emotions that you're experiencing. Maybe it's writing about the path that you want to be going on. Okay. And so, and it might even be writing poetry or writing a story or doing drawing or artwork to be able to express how you're feeling. But journaling can be a really helpful tool. We also have meditation as a really helpful tool, and meditation is known to mean become familiar with. And as you're in the space of meditation, you're in this process of going within, being present with yourself, and getting to know yourself. You're noticing what sorts of things come to the surface and being in the space of allowing them to pass, okay? Not clinging on to them And just being in the space of being present and just practicing silence, maybe also being curious about what sorts of thoughts do pop in your mind. What sorts of ideas do pop in your mind? How are you feeling as you are practicing meditation? Visualization is also another tool that can be really helpful. And so, when we think of visualization and when we're being intentional about this, it can be asking yourself, what is the version of yourself that you're wanting to discover, that you're wanting to step into? What are they like? Okay. What are they doing? What sorts of clothes do they wear? What are their habits? What is their mood? What do they do with their day? And so, really, in the space of visualizing, see if you can connect with this version of yourself. Notice how it feels. You want to bring in all your senses to help make the experience feel really real. Okay. We have inner child's work. And so this can be really vital during this process because there can be parts of us that still exist from the past. And that tends to be the parts of ourselves that we might be reacting more with. And connecting with that child that still lives within us, within our psyche, to see what that part of ourself needs. Okay, what dreams did that part of ourself have that maybe we really want to be honoring? What fears, what wounds is that part of ourself still holding on to? And what does that part need to feel safe? It can be really healing to even pull up an actual photo of yourself when you were at a younger age and feel like you were talking or connecting to that age of yourself too. That's something that can really help just to have that visual with the connection process. As mentioned earlier, we want to look at ways to bring in self compassion, self kindness, self love, self forgiveness. And so, looking at how are we talking to ourselves? Okay. It might feel like our ego is not quite as present as it was before, or maybe we're doing some reprogramming in our brain, okay, by looking at different ways to be encouraging of ourselves, to tell ourselves we're doing the best that we can, or this is exciting to be in the unknown, or who knows what's going to come ahead, okay, versus something that feels more critical. It can turn into a more expansive type feeling during this journey. We can look at making meaning of experiences. Okay. And so, with this, it might be reflecting on different experiences and looking for the silver lining. What were those experiences teaching you? What wisdom did you gain from those experiences? How were they maybe even stepping stones in the evolution of who you are now and who you're in the process of becoming? And it's looking to really reframe those experiences for yourself. We also have the Ho'oponopono. And so I don't know if anybody is familiar with this, but this is a Hawaiian prayer that is for forgiveness. And it just has four phrases that we'll say to ourselves, which is, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And what you do with this is it is like a meditation where you go within, you can shut your eyes and just repeat these phrases over and over to yourself until you're feeling more at peace. You can imagine yourself saying this to your inner child, to your past self. Okay. If there's anybody that you feel that you need to forgive, you can imagine saying these words to them as well. In my experience in doing this, it does bring emotions and tears up to the surface, which is part of the healing, which is perfect. And so, again, those phrases are I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. We also want to look at just different ways to bring in self regulation tools. And this can be through emotion freedom techniques, which is often called EFT or tapping, which is where we connect with an emotion while tapping on different meridian points throughout the body to be able to release some stuck energy and be able to bring in some new, more positive affirmations. And this has been scientifically proven to help with the nervous system response too and take us out of that fight or flight mode if we're feeling emotionally activated. We can also look at just different breathing techniques to implement as well. This can be really helpful because then you're connecting with your body, being more present, and helping everything that's happening within you to slow down a bit. We can do box breathing, such as inhaling for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, then exhaling for 4 to 8 counts. It can be thinking of a positive mantra or phrase to be telling yourself with each inhale and exhale as well. And then affirmations, just looking at different things to be able to tell yourself that are more positive. Some things might not feel believable at first. And if you encounter that, I think something like, I'm in the process of becoming, or I'm in the process of understanding myself better, or I'm doing the best I can, and that's okay. And so look at different affirmations that you can start to share with yourself too. We also have build new habits, make new choices that feel more aligned with the person you're becoming. And this is something that can shift and evolve over time. Asking yourself, what are these habits and choices for this version of yourself that feels more true to you? You might find yourself experiencing different emotions, such as fulfillment, joy, awe, hope, pride, and inspiration. And you might notice that you feel them more fully or more frequently than you may have before. And so this really taps into the process of just being present and getting to know yourself better and appreciating different things. You want to bring in a support system during this rediscovery process. And you want to look at the support system as somebody that's not adding to your stress, but instead is there to support you and listen to you and celebrate you. And finally, we have commit to this relationship with yourself on this rediscovery process. As I mentioned at the very beginning, that when it feels like we're losing ourselves, it's this disconnection from ourselves. And so we're really reconnecting with our true selves on this journey. And so asking yourself what you can do to stay committed to this relationship with you, to honoring this relationship with yourself, to making time for some of these things that are on this slide here, to committing to being curious about yourself, and to going through this process. And so, to wrap up just the content of the presentation today, the last thing I wanted to share is to make an action plan for yourself. And so, really thinking about what that next step might be for you. What is some sort of takeaway that you might have, some sort of aha moment, something that really resonated for you that you want to continue keeping in mind? Okay, maybe it's thinking about something differently. Maybe it is just one of those tools to pull from to be putting into action. Maybe it's just reflecting on something. Okay. And so ask yourself, what is your next step? What is that action plan for yourself? I always like to say with this journey, it is one step at a time. And so just think, what might your next step be and commit to that. Then, after you feel good about that next step, then you can ask yourself, what is the next step that you would like to take? And then this brings us to the time for any questions that you might have. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that I'm able to see the chat.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That was very insightful presentation. We took so many key points from your presentation. So we
Oh,
do
good.
have a lot of questions from the audience, but we have selected the best question. So here is the
Okay.
question from our audience. So, what techniques do you use to help clients with self discovery and relationship healing?
Oh, I missed part of it. What techniques do I use? Do I help clients with to? Can you repeat that one more time?
What techniques do you use to help clients with self discovery and
Oh, relationship
relationship
healing.
healing? Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's one of my favorite things to be able to do. And a lot of times I do help my clients do what I call inner work, which is diving within and also like asking themselves what is something that they feel like they have lost. What are things that they would love to do? What are things that maybe they've thought about doing, but they're afraid to do? And then looking at different ways to be able to overcome that fear, and reframing how they are looking at it. And with relationship healing, that can be interesting because I work with couples and then I also work with individuals as well who are in relationships. And I think it can be most effective to have both people in the room at the same time. But I think it really is trying to help them understand who are they when they are the best version of themselves, or I like to actually say the favorite version of themselves when they're showing up in their relationship, because I think that's what both people desire to experience. And I often find just when conflict arises, underneath, it's the same sort of thing that they're experiencing. And it's the number one thing, even when we think of the relationship with ourselves, it's a disconnect within the relationship. And so then also looking at different ways that they're able to reconnect with the love and the partnership and finding ways as they also reconnect with themselves, that also shows up in the relationship too.
Very well
Mhm.
answered.
Thank you. Thank you so much for giving the best answer for this question. So hope everyone received the answer from you. So thank you so much. Show your some love for the next sessions as well. So you can ask questions and yeah, you can promote in our social networking sites as well. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.
Bye.
Speaker bio or on